So, very good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Probably few of you would have dialed in from different continents. So, thank you very much for joining this hour. Uh, my name is Saurabh, part of ProThoughts team. I'm going to talk about a very interesting topic today. Though it's going to be very simple for understanding perspective, but it might be a little difficult to implement in practice. So I think the topic was pretty easy to understand, but I'm going to leave it to your assumptions what an alpha is, right? So my topic of the day is going to be Alpha Project Manager. A couple of requests. I'm going to talk about for probably 30-40 minutes, and I'll then leave the floor open for question and answers. I'm going to mute. In fact, I've already muted all of you. If you have questions, please note it down or keep in your mind in case you're traveling. And we will have a Q&A session towards the end of this presentation so that I do not lose the flow and everybody has a focus on what I'm talking, right? So those who want to ask a question, they can obviously go ahead and raise the hand. So there is a hand button on the webinar. You can raise a hand and I'll unmute that particular person. Will hear the question. Everybody will be able to hear, and I'll answer the question. Everybody will be able to hear as well. Right? So let's get started. Thanks. So the photo that you see in front of you, I'm not going to tell you who am I in this. Probably I'll let you figure out. Really, the session is all about the alpha. Now, before we start the session, I'm going to make one thing very clear amongst all of us. Just like you, I am a practicing project professional as well. And I believe we all literally go through the project management experiences throughout their daily lives. The word alpha, of course, as you understand, it's a mathematical word. The interpretations of the alpha could be many. I'm trying to keep this simple, the interpretation of an alpha from our practical point of view. But this session is a little different in terms of a great author of a book called The Alpha Project Manager. He wrote about, and the great gentleman's name is Andy Grove. I'm sure a lot of you would have heard about him. He did a lot of great research about this Alpha Project Managers. He said 2% versus 98%. So it says, the tagline says, what the 2% knows that everyone else doesn't know. So this is just about 2% of those versus 98%. It's a race, it's a competition, and it's comparison. So I'm going to bring you a comparative analysis. I'm going to bring you a survey which has been done amongst a group of people. But before that, a little bit of an introduction about myself. About 22 years in IT industry. Have written few articles in various journals, writing my own book, and being a visiting faculty to various B schools in India. Also the past president of PMI Mumbai chapter. I'm sure few of you know me. Those who do not know me, I'm a project professional just like you. I'm a PMP trainer as well for multiple PMP aspirants. So that's a little bit about me. A little bit about ProThoughts. Most of you would have heard about ProThoughts. Those who have not, ProThoughts is 4-year-old startup. It's been given an award in 2015, 2016, and 17 as the startups of the year, and recently been selected as one of the top 50 ideas in the world of project management. So what ProThoughts does primarily does the certifications, do the software like Microsoft Project. So we have we do a software called Project Insights, and of course we do consulting. We have offices in Mumbai, Pune, and Hyderabad primarily, and we operate pan India. So that's a little bit about ProThoughts. This next slide talks about who is Alpha. So this is where you are, and this is where I am as well. If you're not here, then probably you are aspirant to be here. If I'm not here, I'm going to be aspirant to be here as well. Let's see what this slide talks about. What does it indicate to us? So first of all, my sincere gratitude towards the great Andy Grove, Velocity Teach Press, and this entire extract of the presentation has been from the book. Done a good amount of study on the book, and it's very difficult to talk about in the whole book in 1 hour, but it's probably we'll see if we can have multiple sessions if you're really interested. So let's see how this first session goes through. So the Alpha study. So the Alpha study asks a very prominent question: who's doing it right? It's not been asked primarily what is being done as a right thing, as we all would have heard so far, but it's been said it's who's doing it right. You, I, your team, your stakeholders, your customers, whoever, right? So let's see what happens further. The survey, which was primarily done, the potential number of participants of 5,000 people, and out of 5,000 people, there were quite good amount of selection factors, and the entire sample which was selected was 860 project managers. Now, there were, out of these 860 project managers, only 2% of the people, as ranked by team, customers, senior management, as alphas, which were 18 people to be precise, and 6 were females, 12 were males. I wish we could have equal 9 each. And I could see this happening, the gender diversity part. I am a strong believer in that. Non-alphas comprise of remaining 98%. Now, at the end of the presentation, one of the poll says, how effective are you towards alpha or non-alpha side? You got to think through it. So next slide. The methodology for the survey, which was being adopted by Andy Grove, was pretty simple. The following factors were considered. One, the expectation management front, which talked about your expectations as PM. Now I'm going to assume, guys, here, so you are a PM. And the stakeholder expectations. Now, those who are not PM, attending this webinar, you can probably put yourself in the shoes of your project manager and think through it. That's a request. So that's expectation management factor. Second factor was communicating effectively and efficiently. We'll talk about that a little further. Managing issues of yours and others. Others meaning your teams, your stakeholders, customers, etc. Identifying and managing risks, something that a project manager can't live without. Leadership of overall team. Meeting the triple bottom line, which talks about your, as you all know, the cost, schedule, scope, and quality. Managing procurement process, including your vendor management. And we now talk about the 360-degree management, which includes all your stakeholders in terms of partner side. Managing changes to the project, which includes your configuration management. You all know change management is part of configuration management tool. Interesting one. Balancing competing stakeholders' objective to deliver the optimal solution. Very interesting. Difficult as well. Absolutely. Let's agree towards that, but not impossible. And the last one, delivering the product, service, or a result, which is a typical, tagline of a project definition that met your expectations. Yours meaning yours as a PM, right? So that was a methodology to do the survey. And the dimensions, and this is the crux of this entire presentation, the 8 dimensions. I'm sure we can't cover all the 8. Probably I can take a whole day to explain you. We talk about these 8. Probably will just take a sample of 1, 2, or 2 today in this half an hour slot. And I'll leave probably we'll have an interactive session in terms of Q&A for remaining half an hour. So the 8 dimensions talk about attitude and belief, communication, alignment, approach and organization, focus and prioritization, issue management, relationship and conflict, and leadership. So these are the 8 dimensions which have been categorized this survey into. So let's look at, if not 3, at least 1 or 2. I'll be most happy to cover 3, in fact, given time. So first one, let's talk about attitude and belief. Over the past half century, there has been a strong body of research that supports the theory that attitude can measure altitude, you know that. And attitude can have a profound impact on managers' ability to lead. And it has been strongly linked to the job promotions and salary. But does it impact project managers' ability to satisfy stakeholders? Can attitude have an impact on the work the project managers, you and I, do? Can this attitude influence yours and my ability, real or perceived, to deliver the results on the projects? Oh, these are the classic thoughts that comes to your mind when I talk about attitude. So in-depth study has been done on this aspect. Let's think about something. Okay, I'm going to make you assume a situation. It's 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon, 2 p.m. Wherever you are, whichever country you are. How desperately or lazily do you guys look up for upcoming Monday? Straightforward question. And I'm sure many of us will say, oh no, once again another Monday, or once again another week. That's attitude. So the great folks, the great project managers, would say Alpha project managers would look up to a new week, new challenge, new meetings, probably new people, new stakeholders, and new issues, as if they were probably waiting for them to come up. Do any projects go without issues or risk? Of course not. Probably you and I wouldn't be needed, right? So the attitude, 2 parts. One, at 2 p.m. on Sunday, I'm just preparing myself mentally for upcoming week, though I'm with my family. And the second category of the people, oh, it's going to be another week. Oh, that particular stakeholder is going to jump on me on Monday or Tuesday once he's back or she's back. So this is called Sunday afternoon depression syndrome. Keep this in your mind. So the first scenario that I'm going to present to you here is this beautiful statement called, I have responsibility but no authority. Now, this particular question really comes from a point where I ask myself, do I love my job? Is it a choice or it happens automatically? Those who ask you a question, you love your job at Sunday 2 p.m. in afternoon, right? The Alpha project managers surveyed 67% of them said, yes, I do. And non-Alpha said 32% of the overall population said, no, we don't. So the choice is yours, whether you say yes or no. Is it human-made or is come automatically? Choice is yours, right? So based on that, I remember Tom Peters' statement, no one is given authority, friends. Just have to take it. I know that we all are responsible to manage projects. Do you think you have an authority to manage projects? Let's see a beautiful slide here. Think through it. The alphas generally believe that they have enough authority to manage the projects. And when I just talk about this, basically 89% numbers goes on to the alpha side. There's only 47% towards the non-alphas. Out of 860 responses, 18 alphas, 842 non-alphas. And the question was, I have adequate authority to manage the projects for which I'm responsible. This was surveyed for the project managers. If you see left-hand side, you see the project manager. So if I flip this and show the another point of view from the senior management, the same question, that this project manager has the necessary organization authority to manage the project successfully. Look at the percentages. The managers of alphas and manager of non-alphas almost like equal. They say that yes, they do. So is a gap. You saw this. Non-alpha is 47%, which means they assume that they don't have authority. But the senior management assume, or probably it could be real for them, that they say that they do have authority. I'm sure such a stark difference is one of the important parameters for you and I, which gives us such immense amount of importance to assumption. We all assume in real life. We all assume. The only challenge is assumptions need to be validated to be true at the end of the project, that you know from your scope statement that we all have done the part of the assumption study. It needs to be validated to be true. If it doesn't, it might have a little impact or high impact or severe impact on the project objectives. You know that well as well. So the classic survey which brought out the attitude and the beliefs. When I say belief, I believe that I have power, I believe I have authority, and I definitely know that I have responsibility, versus I know for sure that I've got responsibility, I've got authority, I've got power to manage the project. And if you have a strong belief within you, which you can convert into the fact that you have what it takes to deliver the results, tangible results, I'm sure your managers also follow the same principles. Your belief becomes truth for the managers, because your perceptions, the way you drive your perceptions, sorry guys, making too much of a psychological words, but that's a fact, friends. I mean, I've gone through it. How confident are you in your assumptions? The assumptions making truth. So that's the another point I wanted to show you. The another thing that you see in the slide, what's important, what is importance of your role on your current project? And your perception for the alpha, it's a 96%. It's very important because it is my career. The alphas have made the project management as a career. For the non-alpha, it's about 70%, which is pretty low. And say, just low, pretty low. Then probably we do not, rather than doing the project, we don't do the project at all. If you do not feel that you are important or your role is important. So I'm going to make a statement here. Whether alphas seek out the more training opportunities and hence they call the alphas after getting trained, or vice versa, it's always a chicken and egg situation. If I look at a senior management's perception on the same thing, what's the importance of your role on the current project? Your senior management feel 94% vis-a-vis 96% that you felt versus no alpha. See, 69% versus 70% you felt. So your perception, as I said, is transpired across your management. See, that's a fact of the survey. Your senior management thinks what you perceive. So if you perceive that your role on the project is very strategic, you are a CEO of a project as a project manager, your senior management, if not today, friends, practically, over the period of time, they'll start believing in it. And believe me, it's the same happened in my career as well. You need to believe it. So this is the another perception turned reality. The next one I'm going to talk about is communication. I'm sure it's pretty easy to understand, very, very difficult to implement, friends. I'm going to take up communication class here, but I'm going to just talk about communication is something which is the bread and butter for a project manager. 90%, 95%, I would say, though the books and periodical magazine, the research report says 90%, I would say 95% of the project manager's time getting into communications. So whether you are trying to make a status report, whether you are sitting in a project plan meeting and you are just doing a brainstorming, or whether you are communicating or talking to your stakeholders, whether you are doing some part of a writing for your stakeholders communication or emails on the project status or a dashboard, every now and then you're trying to do a communication. So what about communication? The alpha project managers do not assume, which means they do have something called communications plan. Something like who speaks to whom, what's being talked about, and what frequency and how. It's a very simple plan. I'm not sure how many of us really makes it's not really required on all the projects. As I keep saying, we always tailor this kind of things to the project. If it's going to be a 1 week project, I can't waste my time on this. But if it's going to be a 1 year project, it definitely makes sense to have your communication plan in place. But to do that, what you need is understanding of your stakeholders. And this is where you and I fail at times. Let's be honest. Understand your stakeholders. Very easy to understand in the theoretical principles, but difficult at times to implement this. When I talk about understanding the stakeholders, which means getting into their shoes, thinking what they think, understanding their communication requirements, making yourself clear that, okay, if a stakeholder needs a dashboard in every Friday to be communicated at, let's say, 4 p.m. every Friday, then that should go. Now let's giving you a small situation of my real crux. I was supposed to go out of country on one particular month, and I had a monthly schedule with my 250 stakeholders to be sent across. If I do not put up a program report as a program manager for a program of 8 different projects, one single month, then it's going to be a problem because it's going to be monthly dashboard. How can I forget this? So the month which I'm traveling, on that particular Friday, last Friday of the month, I don't have an access to anything because I'm on personal leave. Yes, you have a chance to hand it over to somebody. Yes, you could also use your tools like your softwares and create a workflows. That's exactly what I did. So I know that my stakeholders need to see the dashboard. This is where my prediction says my stakeholders would be waiting for this dashboard on that particular Friday. If not all 250, at least 25, top 10% would be waiting desperately to see that dashboard. Define a workflow. Put parameters, your so-called earned value parameters in it, for example, and shoot it across. The workflow automatically picks the data and you never know. You just enjoy your vacation, but you did it. Your stakeholders, so-called, if not delighted, at least are satisfied, right? So with respect to communication, the two questions asked as usual, one to the project manager and one to the customer, senior manager, and team members. How would you rank your overall communication effectiveness as a PM? Look at the response. The alpha and non-alpha both says 84, 82%. But look at the stakeholders. What do they say? 1103 responses. The non-alpha stakeholders just talk about 49% effectiveness. This is a major, major, major blow. I don't know whether you really take this seriously, but I really do. This is a major blow. How do your stakeholder perceive versus how do you assume? You assume 82%. Your stakeholders assume 49%. This is where you go to bridge the gap. This is where you and I, of course, it's not an overnight job. We always keep striving hard. I'm still learning. I'm still learning in the field. I'm still learning from my stakeholders. How do I bridge this gap? Am I perfect? Of course not. I'm not perfect. So this is the real crux on the communication side, that your stakeholders do not perceive what you assume. And you thought you are on the dot when you say 82%. No. So this is where communication makes a lot of differences. And how do the alpha people do it? How do they do this? So one, they talk to their stakeholders very early in the game, understand their requirements on the communication and tailor to the project needs and project objectives and expected results or outcomes. Two, as I said, set communication schedule, which means your communication management plan. Who talks to whom, at what frequency, what's been talked about and how, methodologies, etc. Three, very clear and concise communication. This is where your effectiveness and efficiencies make a lot of difference, guys. So when I talk about clear and concise communication, it has to be absolutely bias-free or unbiased communication. And to do this, you need to really, really, really understand one word called feedback. I'm not going to show you the communication flow here, sender receiver model so-called, but it's very simple. Whatever you communicate, you're going to ensure that you get a feedback back from your stakeholders. So probing the expectations and seeking the feedback is important thing here. Now, the last thing we talk about is create an open channel, having continuous dialogue with the stakeholders. Though it may not be easy at all the times, it may not be possible at all the times. Let me give you another example of this open channel, okay? Let's say your project is 60% behind schedule and you are requested to do show a monthly status report to the stakeholders, and your third time in the row, your project is behind schedule. The question is, are you being honest? Are you having a continuous dialogue with your customers, or you hide something? I'm going to answer this back to you. Of course, you know it well. So I know it's not easy. It's not easy to be open, because many of the non-alpha people who were being uh, asked this question, they say that, you know what, if I communicate everything honestly, then the people will set their own agendas and play politics or play games. Fair enough. That's a challenge for you then. Then in that particular situation, what are you going to do? You are going to you are the own boss, right? So you're going to take a decision. That's another thing I'm going to talk about, but I don't think I have a time today probably to talk about is the decision making as a PM. If you think that you are having authority to manage a project, then obviously says that you have authority to take decisions also on behalf of your organization or behalf of your stakeholders. Yeah, but it has to be a collective decision, of course. So we can probably talk about sometime next time on decision making. So the key strategies before I end up this particular point on the communication is, please understand the requirements of your stakeholders and tailor their stakeholders' needs to the requirements of the projects to have effective and efficient communication. 2, be predictable. As I said, if you are going out of town and your stakeholders expect your monthly dashboard to come every Friday 4 p.m., then predict that that's going to happen and ensure that you have your plan B's and C's of the world. 3, clarify and simplify. Nothing like it. If you over communicate, at times it's fine depending on the stakeholders, but ensure that you simplify it. Too much of a communication can also break some of the stakeholders down. I see a lot of people, for example, I was just reviewing some report on the number of incidents on the technology side logged, and I just saw almost like 30 different columns. If I give this 30 different columns to my stakeholders, how many of you are my stakeholders, okay? How many of you going to read them? Probably hardly 1 or 2, all the columns. So what the crux is, first 8 or 10 columns, which are very important, you need to prioritize them. Right? So the focus and relevance comes from that factor. If you have 30 columns to be communicated, you're going to have focus on what's the most important crux to be communicated out of it. So the focus and relevance, which talk about effectiveness of communication as well. And the last one is, as I said, fear of communication. Oh, what will happen if I communicate the 60% over or behind schedule, over budget kind of a project scenario every time to the stakeholders? Well, that's a fear. What happens if the people have set their own agendas? What happens if I over communicate? So there is always the fear of communication, which you mean you need to wipe it off, either this side or that side. Sorry, but that's a matter of fact. And the last, probably I'm going to spend 5 minutes on this particular piece, is alignment. Now, what is an alignment all about? The alignment is all about you, your project, your team, your organization, and your stakeholders. So when I talk about alignment, it just talk about this simple metrics where you say that you have a project team who is completely aligned to your thoughts, your methodologies, your plan of action, your strategies, your ball game, which would have been collectively decided between you and your team. You are aligned with your programs and portfolios and those respective senior management, which who themselves are aligned to the organization itself. That means, in a nutshell, your project is aligned to your organizational goals and objectives which are being carved out from the vision, mission, etc. of the organization, which ultimately is driven by the market requirement for a new product or a new service, or existing product, existing service need to be improved, etc. So this is a very simple levels of a project alignment that I always think through. And Andy Grove has so nicely demonstrated. If you just probably read Andy Grove, probably get through much more detail about this, which I just have put in a one single slide. This is important. So Alpha knows how their projects aligns to their company's strategies, which actually come from the vision and missions of the company or organization. A couple of questions which been asked to Alpha: is your primary project considered highly strategic to the organization? That is, does it strongly contribute to the performing organization core strategic goals? Very, very high level statement. I do not assume here that all of you would probably be able to understand this in completeness. A lot of people don't in the company. A lot of project managers don't even bother about it. But that's not my job. Sorry. That's my manager's job, or that's my manager's job. Sorry, that's not my job. Why should I bother? So even the alphas fare only 60% over here. We still aren't there. We're still learning to be a CEO of a real project. To grow from a CEO of a project to the CEO of organization, of course, it takes a long time. It's not an overnight activity. So when you think about the bottom slide, bottom picture, is this project manager's primary project considered highly strategic to the organization? And the responses are pathetic. Look at 60% versus 45.3% and 41% versus 25.2%. That means senior management don't think that you understand whether your project has been really aligned to the strategic goals or objectives of the organization. This is the challenge. Apart from the communication, there's a second challenge which need to be prioritized. Happens over a period of time, but yes. Why am I doing the project? Does this project align to some kind of a benefits which are expected by the organization? Or because it's been just asked by my company, by my management to do it, and that's the reason I'm doing it. Could be either of the answers. I'm not going to say who's right and who's wrong. But yeah, just take a little more deep dive. I also do it. I also still learn it. I also understand the top strategies of the topmost people, the senior management, board of directors. What's running in their mind, you never know. I also understand that. So that's a small request. This is a pathetic score. Let's see how do we improve the score overall in this alignment part. I know it's it's not easy, but we can definitely make it possible over the period of time. 70% of the alphas can articulate their organization's stated strategic goals when asked. 30% still didn't. Only 20% of the non-alphas can do the same, which means 80% is still left behind. The last one is a team alignment. So this question actually was asked to the team, who the criteria for them was they should have worked almost like about 500 hours for last 3 years with you on the project. And then the team said, so the team question was, what is your personal motivation to see this project succeed? And you see the response from the team. So say 96%, I would say good enough. But if you say 79%, that means the team is not at par as at par as you are, or the team do not buy in to your thoughts, your strategies, your game plan, etc. So I'm going to summarize, my friends, very quickly. One, who's Alpha? Alpha is nothing but you and I, who could be the top 2% performers, who are actively engaged in the project, who think that, oh, this is your real own project. If it cannot be successful, if it fails, it will have a huge impact on you as a person as well. So the top performers who are actively engaged in the project, and they always constantly ask not only your senior managers, but the 360-degree about the feedbacks and the reviews. A lot of companies I know, they've broken their 360-degree performance appraisal cycle on a yearly basis, from a yearly basis to the quarterly basis, and that's very good, actually speaking. It's something we should do in a project as well. The next one, the summarizing factor: top performers harness and direct the motivation of the team members. Something very simple enough, but yeah, unless you influence their motivation, just giving motivation is not going to be enough. That means you're going to lead the pack. Unless you are self-motivated, you can't expect your team to be motivated. So this is where you have to balance out your self-interest versus the remaining values and the factors of project management. And the last slide to end this with: the top performers keep the team aligned to the project priorities. They have a common vision, which is called shared visions between them. So identify the correct critical success factors, apply the appropriate resources to those identified 2, 5, or 10 critical success factors for every project, handle the risk appropriately, and protect the team from distraction, because it happens over the period of time that you see that teams get distracted. If typically it's a long project, then teams' interest go diluted. So you have to pull them back and ensure that they still are part of a shared vision. That's about it. And I'm going to open up the floor, friends, for the questions. If you have any, I still finish 1 minute ahead of 45 minutes. We can spend remaining 15 minutes or 16 minutes on Q&A. Think through it. I'm not in a hurry to go. So those who have a question, please raise your hand. We can have a very open conversation. I'm going to start with Joseph. Joseph, you have a question. No? Interesting. No question. How about Parimal? Parimal, you have a question. Joseph, can you hear me? Okay. I think Anuj have a question. Yes, Anuj. Sir, please go ahead. I've unmuted you.
Sir, I just wanted to ask that you said that the Alpha project manager, he encourages feedback and review. Does it slow the project timeline? Does it slow the performance?
It does at times. Absolutely, Anuj. And this is where you have to balance. It does. I'll tell you what. Every time you ask for the feedback and reviews, it's definitely going to slow it off. That doesn't mean that you should just keep asking about it. At a very important milestones in your project lifecycle, you should definitely pose these questions. To how many stakeholders? Probably you don't know. But the most important stakeholders in your project, so-called key stakeholders, you should either formally or informally, I'll leave it to you, should ask about the feedbacks. If you have a chance to do the survey using a surveymonkey.com, etc., amongst the, let's say, 10, 20, 25 stakeholders, definitely at the end of every survey session, the milestone, you could do this service session. But yeah, to answer your question, it does. You got to balance it out.
Thank you, sir.
Very valid question. Very valid question, Anush. Just going to mute Anush for a while and open Chintan. Hi, Chintan. You got a question, Chintan? Chintan, you are unmuted. Please feel free and ask.
Can you hear me, Saurabh?
Yes, of course I can hear you.
Okay. Saurabh, when we are talking about team alignment, yeah, I'm into construction field, and most of the time I feel that when we are talking about big teams, like not a very big, but a team of 20 or 25 people, there's always some person who are never in the favor of project, or who do not align with the project objectives at any given point of time. So what we
Correct.
do is we just deal with it, and we move ahead. I mean, there's it's just a harsh way, but we cannot listen to them every time they have a problem. Sometimes they do create a problem also. So it's not being a alpha manager thing, but then we have to deal with it.
Agreed. And my question is, how do you manage them? How do you manage those 20% notorious people? How do you manage them? Do you take a stick or do you give a carrot?
No, yeah, giving a carrot is always good, but it's not every time in our hand to give a carrot. It's sometimes in HR's hand to give a carrot, but sometimes what we do is we just ignore and move ahead. I mean, we just show them their face in the mirror, and then just we go ahead with the person who are really interested to get the project done.
Excellent. I agree with you, Chintan. One single rule of stakeholder management, managing them closely, do not apply everybody in all situations. So your situation in the construction side, right? Absolutely. Uh, you have notorious people. You take a soft approach to start with, no doubt.
Yes.
Uh, you do a kind of settlement afterwards, no doubt. Second one, you give them a
Yeah.
warning third time, very soft warning, no doubt. And then a little more harder warning, and then threatening and a pink slip, simple as that. And this is how you might do in a very uh, unstructured format. There's nothing wrong and nothing right, Chintan. The
Yes.
only thought process that I'm thinking honestly, Chintan, right now is when you ignore him, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
is there an impact on your project objective?
Most of the time, it is not a big impact. I certainly see whether the problem he's raising, is there any impact on the project or not. If there is not much impact, I certainly move ahead. If there is a big impact, then I have to wait and address his issue first, and then see the project objectives.
And have you had this kind of situation where because of your ignorance or because of a stick approach, some people would have retaliated and you would have they would have left the job, or they would have come against you to the HR, they would have complained against you. Oh, this boss is not good enough for me, I don't want to work with him. Does that
Yeah,
happen?
certainly. Yes, yes, yes. I'm not their favorite project manager in at some time, but
Hmm.
then I'm yeah, I'm aligned with the management, and I'm aligned with the people who are directly working in the project, who are good people. So I'm not worried much that my project will suffer or anything like that. But then I always want to take everyone in the same boat, but I could not do that. That's the
And not
issue I
only
see.
you, Chintan. Thanks. I mean, I appreciate your view. And not only you, we all, most of the time. It's not
Yes.
necessarily the ideology situation which, the great practitioner, we always talk about having, taking our team along with us. No, that doesn't happen always, to be honest. No, it probably, and and that's where it keeps you on your toes, because you then have a challenge with few people which you go to somehow. You can't if you ignore yourself, then it's going to be a problem, sir. If you have ignored yourself from this, if you withdraw, so-called, from this conflict, withdrawal is not the key. Confrontation is always the best thing to do. Yes,
Okay.
forcing, you can do a forcing methodology on that, no doubt, depending on the situation, but that's going to be practical. So I also face the same problem. I think most of the project managers in a real situation face these problems. It's just that how do we balance this out? Easier said than done. Yes, when it actually happens in practice, I know what kind of a toll it takes on you and me both. So
Now,
I agree with
earlier I
you.
thought it is happening in the construction projects only, but as
Now,
you said,
believe me, Chintan, it happens on all the projects I've seen, all the
okay.
projects. Great. Thanks, Chintan. Uh, Anybody else? Hi, Parimal. Okay. Yes, Parimal. Please go ahead, sir. Parimal, can you hear me?
Sir, am I audible to you?
Yes, now you can. Now you are audible, Parimal. Go ahead.
Sir, my question is this: as we discuss in one slide, that one of measurement criteria for Alpha Project Manager is stakeholder expectation measurement. But sir, many times it is difficult to manage each and every stakeholder's expectation, and sometimes it is not favorable that we fulfill each and every expectation from every stakeholders.
Hmm.
So, sir, how to do that?
Very good question. Thank you. Very simple answer. Parimal, you don't need to manage everyone. You can't make everybody happy. I'm sure you would
Yes, sir.
have heard this statement a number of times. I also do the same thing. I can't make everybody happy. So you have heard about good cop and bad cop concept.
Yes, sir.
PMs, ideally speaking, should be good cop. But then there has to be some bad cop paired with the good cop. Okay. That means
Yes, sir.
that understanding of good cop and a bad cop should be good enough. So if your team, one of the team members become good cop, then you need to become a bad cop at the cost of your little bit of uncomfortness to your stakeholders. It just happened. I'll tell you today. I was having a conversation with one of the stakeholders. This is a live
Yes, sir.
example, and the expectation was skyrocketed. The baseline was something different. Expectations were too high. Now, there's one thing that you can say that, hey, this is a scope creep. Sorry, I can't do it. If you know, when you have a very strategic customer, and when you manage that kind of a state, when you make that kind of statement, it may not work always. But you are right on your front saying that, okay, this is too much to be given to you. But the stakeholder is very demanding. And I know if I don't deliver, then it will have a much bigger impact on people's time, my team's time, which is very crucial. You have to balance that out then. That means I play a kind of a bad cop role where my one of my team member played a good cop role, helping out a situation, and then I bashed off in a very nicer manner, saying, "Okay, we just helped you out to an extent. Having said that, any more thing on this probably will not be able to support. I hope you understand." Now, there are ways to manage. The stakeholders also understand, but it's not necessary that you will keep every stakeholder under every situation, Parimal, happy. That's not going to be possible. In real life
Yes, sir.
scenario, that's not going to be possible. So I think that's something which is very important to remember. Um,
Yes, sir.
but then that give you a lot of learning to you and I both. I mean, we keep learning. how to then how to play it around. Then have some kind of a role play between good cop and bad cop. Then you do it.
Yeah.
Then you
That's
identify
all.
to keep me happy. Sorry, go ahead, Parimal.
That's all means really about playing with stakeholder management and managing expectation. That's right, sir.
True, no choice. Thanks, Parimal. Who else?
Thank you.
Nobody? All right. It seems that folks in India are all hungry. Very good. And I don't want to get into between your session and a dinner. So I'm going to open up a poll. So I've got 4 different polls. If you could just happen to answer them, I'll launch one by one. On the screen, you'll be able to vote one of the 3 or 4 different parameters on the poll. Quick, 4 questions only. Take your 2 minutes. Just going to launch it. So my first question says, how did you find the session today? I still see 88% voted, still 12% yet to be voted. Can I request everybody to remaining people? Yep. All right. Thanks. Oh, fantastic. I got the last one as well. Thanks. So that's going to be first one. The second one coming up on your slide. How effectively can you apply these learnings? Just read this through. I've deliberately crafted this in such a manner that those who are being honest, they can be honest, saying that it's nice to hear that, but I've got constraints. That's fair. That's fair to hear. Good. I like that honesty. Thank you. Good. Thanks. So that's, we'll close that. Third one coming up on your screen. To what extent are you an Alpha PM? Be honest as you could. I'm not going to take it away from you. Okay, that's good. Thank you for your honesty. And the last one coming up on your screen is, would you like to have part 2 of this webinar? Yes and no. This is just a tip of an iceberg. So I'm going to launch this. Interestingly, that was very simple enough. Everybody says yes. Then, guys, if you say yes, please stay by to your commitment, okay? I have a request. So whenever we have a second, I'm glad and thank you for this. I'm glad that you said yes, but then everybody said yes. So whenever this happens, please, please, please take out some time, 8 to 9, this only 1 hour of your busy schedule for this, and we can have much more fun. Stay tuned, guys, and thank you so much for that. I really thank you for this opportunity, guys, to make me talk about this, share a few ideas. Thank you very much and have a great week ahead, guys. See you again. Thank you.